Please, Marcus, just let me go home." The brick wall scraped against Elena's back as her ex-boyfriend's grip tightened around her wrist, his fingers leaving marks that would last for days. The narrow alley behind Romano's Italian restaurant reeked of garbage and desperation, much like the relationship she'd finally found the courage to escape 6 months ago. "Let you go?" Marcus's laugh was cruel, his breath reeking of whiskey. "After what you did to me? After you humiliated me in front of everyone at the country club?" Elena's heart pounded as she pressed herself further against the cold brick, wishing she could disappear into the wall itself. She'd made the mistake of going to dinner with her sister at Romano's, never expecting Marcus to be waiting in the parking lot when she came out. He'd followed her into this godforsaken alley, and now she was trapped. "I didn't humiliate you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I just told them we weren't together anymore when they asked about the wedding." Marcus's hand came up fast, and Elena flinched, closing her eyes and preparing for the blow she knew was coming. She'd felt his anger before, had worn the concealer to hide the bruises, had made excuses about walking into doors and falling downstairs. But this time felt different. This time there was something darker in his eyes. The hit never came. "Touch her again and die." The voice was low, deadly, and absolutely calm. Elena's eyes snapped open to see a figure standing at the mouth of the alley, backlit by the streetlight. She couldn't make out his features, but she could feel the danger radiating from him like heat from a fire. Marcus's grip loosened immediately. "Hey man, this is between me and my girl. Walk away." "Your girl?" The stranger stepped into the alley, and Elena caught her breath. He was tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair and the kind of sharp jawline that belonged in a magazine. His suit was expensive, the kind that cost more than most people made in a month, and perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders. But it was his eyes that made her shiver. They were the color of storm clouds, and when they fixed on Marcus, she saw something that made her blood run cold. This man was not someone you crossed. "She's not your anything," the stranger continued, his voice never rising above that deadly calm. "And you're going to take your hands off her and walk away. Now." Marcus puffed up his chest, trying to look intimidating, but Elena could see the tremor in his hands. "Who the hell do you think you are?" A smile curved the stranger's lips, but it held no warmth. "I'm Dominic Torino." The color drained from Marcus's face so quickly that Elena thought he might faint. Even she had heard that name whispered in certain circles. The Torino family didn't just run businesses in the city, they ran the city. And Dominic was the head of it all, the man they called the King of Chicago. "Mr. Torino," Marcus stammered, releasing Elena so quickly she stumbled. I didn't know, I wasn't." "You weren't what?" Dominic's voice dropped even lower, and he took another step closer. "You weren't about to hit a woman in my territory? You weren't planning to hurt someone who clearly doesn't want to be here?" Marcus was backing away now, his bravado completely gone. "No, sir. No, I would never." "Elena, tell him. Tell him I would never hurt you." The hysterical laugh that escaped Elena's throat surprised even her. "Tell him you would never hurt me?" "Marcus, you gave me a black eye 3 weeks before I left you. You broke my ribs when I said I wanted to go back to work. You..." "Enough." Dominic's word cut through her rising panic like a blade. His eyes never left Marcus, but somehow Elena felt protected by his presence. "You have 30 seconds to get out of my sight. If I ever see you near her again, if I even hear your name in the same sentence as hers, I will make you disappear. Do you understand me?" Marcus nodded frantically, already stumbling toward the other end of the alley. "Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'm sorry, Mr. Torino. I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize to me," Dominic said quietly. "Apologize to her. Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You'll never see me again, I swear." And then he was gone, running into the night like the coward he'd always been. Elena slumped against the wall, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her up. The adrenaline was leaving her system, and she was starting to shake. She'd heard stories about Dominic Torino, whispers about what he did to people who crossed him. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt safer than she had in months. "Are you hurt?" His voice was different now, gentler, though still carrying that undertone of absolute authority. Elena looked up to find him standing a few feet away, giving her space but close enough that she could see the concern in those storm-gray eyes. No. I mean, my wrist hurts, but..." She looked down at the finger-shaped bruises already forming on her pale skin. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't... Don't think about it." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Vincent, I need you to pick up Elena. What's your last name?" "Morrison," she whispered. "Elena Morrison. We're in the alley behind Romano's. Bring her to the penthouse." He hung up and looked back at her. "My driver will be here in 2 minutes." "Oh, no, I couldn't. I mean, I appreciate what you did, but I should just go home." Dominic tilted his head, studying her with those intense eyes. "Where's home?" "I have an apartment on 5th Street. It's not much, but does he know where you live?" The question hit her like a punch to the stomach. Of course Marcus knew where she lived. He'd been calling her, showing up at her work, following her to restaurants. Her little studio apartment with its flimsy locks and ground-floor windows wouldn't keep him out if he really wanted in. "Yes," she admitted, hating how small her voice sounded. "Then you're not going home tonight." It wasn't a request. "You're coming with me." Any other time, Elena would have argued. She was an independent woman, had been taking care of herself just fine since she left Marcus. But standing in this alley, still feeling the phantom pressure of his fingers on her wrist, she couldn't bring herself to refuse the protection this dangerous stranger was offering. "Why?" she asked instead. "Why are you helping me?" Something flickered across Dominic's face, an expression too quick for her to read. "Let's just say I don't like bullies." A black sedan pulled up to the mouth of the alley, and a man in a dark suit got out. He was almost as tall as Dominic, but broader, with the look of someone who'd seen his share of fights. "Vincent," Dominic said as the man approached. "This is Elena. She'll be staying with us tonight." Vincent nodded without question. "Of course, sir. Ma'am?" He gave Elena a respectful nod that somehow made her feel like less of a victim, and more like a person deserving of courtesy. "I should call my sister," Elena said as Dominic gestured for her to walk ahead of him toward the car. "She's probably wondering where I am." "You can call her from the penthouse." He opened the car door for her, and Elena caught a hint of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her stomach do strange flips. The ride through the city was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Dominic sat beside her in the back seat, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, but careful not to crowd her. She found herself stealing glances at his profile. The strong jaw, the way his dark hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, the way his hands rested calmly on his knees. Those hands had probably done terrible things. She knew what men like him were capable of, had read enough stories in the newspapers to understand that Dominic Torino didn't get his reputation through charity work. But those same hands had saved her tonight. "Thank you," she said quietly, as they pulled up to a gleaming high-rise that dominated the Chicago skyline. He turned to look at her, and for a moment Elena felt like he could see straight through to her soul. "Don't thank me yet." The penthouse was like something out of a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city lights, and every piece of furniture looked like it cost more than Elena made in a year. But it was surprisingly warm, lived in despite its obvious luxury. "The guest room is down the hall," Dominic said, shrugging out of his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. The movement revealed a gun holster under his left arm, a stark reminder of exactly who she was dealing with. "There are clothes in the closet that should fit you." "Clothes?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "Do you often have women staying over?" The words left her mouth. She regretted them. What was wrong with her? This man had saved her from God knew what, offered her a safe place to sleep, and she was questioning his personal life? But instead of taking offense, Dominic smiled. A real smile this time. One that transformed his entire face and made him look younger, less dangerous. My sister stays here sometimes when she's in town. Sophia's about your size. Relief flooded through Elena, though she couldn't quite understand why it mattered so much that the clothes belonged to his sister and not some other woman. I should call my sister, she said, suddenly feeling awkward in the opulent space. Of course. The phone's on the kitchen counter. He loosened his tie, and Elena tried not to notice the way the simple gesture made her pulse quicken. I'll be in my office. Let me know if you need anything. Elena waited until he disappeared down another hallway before picking up the phone with shaking hands. Elena, where are you? You left the restaurant an hour ago. Sarah, I'm okay. Something happened with Marcus, but I'm safe now. Marcus? What did that bastard do? Elena, if he hurt you, he didn't get the chance. Someone helped me. Elena found herself unable to explain exactly who had helped her. How could she tell her sister that she was currently standing in the penthouse of Chicago's most notorious crime boss? Where are you now? I'm staying with a friend tonight. Marcus knows where I live, and I don't feel safe going home. There was a pause. What friend? Elena, you don't have any friends you haven't told me about. Elena closed her eyes. Sarah knew her too well. After Marcus had isolated her from most of her social circle, her sister was one of the few people she had left. It's complicated. I'll explain everything tomorrow, okay? I just need you to know that I'm safe. Elena Marie Morrison, you tell me where you are right now, or I'm calling the police. Please, Sarah. I promise I'll call you first thing in the morning. I need tonight to figure things out. Another pause, longer this time. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. I'm safer than I've been in months. I love you. Elena hung up before her sister could respond, knowing that if she stayed on the line much longer, she'd break down and tell Sarah everything. And she wasn't ready to explain why she'd agreed to come home with a man she'd never met, why every instinct should be screaming at her to run, but instead, she felt more protected than she had since before Marcus. The guest room was beautiful, decorated in soft blues and creams that immediately put Elena at ease. The closet was indeed full of women's clothes, expensive pieces that still had tags on them. She selected a pair of soft pajamas and took the longest shower of her life in the marble bathroom, letting the hot water wash away not just the grime of the alley, but the phantom feeling of Marcus's hands on her. When she finally emerged, she found a mug of tea waiting on the bedside table, still steaming. She hadn't heard anyone come in, but the simple gesture brought tears to her eyes. When was the last time someone had taken care of her like this? Sleep should have been impossible. She was in the home of a dangerous man. Her life had been turned upside down, and somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably planning his next move. But wrapped in the softest sheets she'd ever felt, Elena found herself drifting off almost immediately. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, sunlight streaming through windows she hadn't bothered to cover the night before. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality came flooding back, and she sat up with a start. Good morning. Dominic was standing in the doorway, holding a tray that looked ridiculously small in his large hands. He was wearing dark jeans and a white button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Somehow he looked even more dangerous in casual clothes. I thought you might be hungry, he said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. Vincent makes incredible pancakes. Elena pulled the sheet up higher, suddenly aware that the silk pajamas she'd borrowed were probably more revealing than she'd realized when she put them on. You didn't have to. When was the last time you ate? The question caught her off guard. Yesterday, I think. Before dinner with Sarah, but then Marcus showed up and then you need to eat. He gestured to the tray. I'll be in the kitchen when you're ready to talk. He was almost to the door when Elena found her voice. Talk about what? Dominic paused, his hand on the doorframe. About what happens now. Elena's stomach clenched, and not from hunger. What did happen now? She couldn't hide in his penthouse forever, couldn't expect this stranger to protect her indefinitely. But the thought of going back to her apartment, back to looking over her shoulder every time she left the house, made her want to crawl back under the covers. The food was incredible, and Elena found herself eating more than she had in weeks. Living with Marcus had trained her to make herself small in every way, including appetite. It felt revolutionary to finish an entire plate of food without someone commenting on it. She found Dominic in the kitchen, reading something on his phone while drinking coffee from a mug that looked child-sized in his hands. He looked up when she entered, and Elena was struck again by how handsome he was. In the morning light, she could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes, could count the faint lines that appeared when he smiled. "Better?" he asked. "Much, thank you." Elena set her empty plate on the counter, trying to ignore how domestic the whole scene felt. "I should probably go home. I need to get ready for work, and I've imposed on you long enough." "What do you do?" "I'm a librarian at the university. Children's literature research." She waited for the usual reaction, the polite disinterest, the subtle dismissal. Marcus had always made her feel like her work was a cute hobby rather than a real career. But Dominic's expression was genuinely interested. "That sounds fascinating. You must love books." "I do." Elena found herself smiling. "I know it's not exciting, but there's something magical about connecting children with stories that will change their lives." "Who says it's not exciting? You're shaping young minds, introducing them to worlds they never knew existed. That's incredibly important work." The sincerity in his voice made Elena's chest tight. When was the last time someone had talked about her career like it mattered? "Anyway," she said, looking down at her hands, "I should let you get back to your life. You've done more than enough." "Elena." The way he said her name made her look up. "Do you really think he's going to just disappear? Men like Marcus, they don't give up when they're told to leave. They get angry, and they get more dangerous. He was terrified of you. He was terrified in the moment, but fear fades, and stupidity is permanent." Dominic set down his mug and took a step closer. "He's going to convince himself that what happened last night was a fluke, that I won't really follow through on my threat. And then he's going to come for you." Elena's hands began to shake. "So what am I supposed to do? Hide forever? Change my name and move to another state? Or you let me handle it?" There was something in his tone that made Elena take a step back. "Handle it how?" "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do." Elena crossed her arms, trying to look braver than she felt. "If you're talking about my life, I deserve to know what you're planning." Dominic studied her for a long moment. "Marcus Williams works for Hartley Financial, correct? Junior partner, specializes in trust fund management for wealthy families?" Elena nodded, surprised he knew so much. "Hartley Financial handles investments for several of my legitimate businesses. It would be very easy for them to discover that Mr. Williams has been embezzling from his clients. The evidence would be overwhelming, and he'd be facing 20 years in federal prison. But he hasn't been embezzling, has he?" Dominic's smile was sharp. "He will have been by the time my people are finished. A man facing that kind of prison time doesn't have time to harass ex-girlfriends. He'll be too busy trying to save his own skin." Elena stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. "You're talking about framing him." "I'm talking about removing a threat." Dominic's expression never changed. "Marcus Williams is a predator who has hurt you, and will hurt you again if given the chance. I'm offering to make sure he never gets that chance." "This is crazy." Elena ran her hands through her hair, pacing to the window and back. "I can't ask you to destroy someone's life, for me." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Why?" The question burst out of her, months of confusion and pain behind it. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Dominic was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. "My mother spent 12 years married to a man who hit her. Every time she got the courage to leave, he'd find her and drag her back. The police wouldn't help. He was a respected businessman, and she was just a woman who bruised easily. She died when I was 16. The official cause was a fall down the stairs, but we both know what really happened." Elena's heart clenched. Dominic, I'm so sorry. I swore that day that I would never let another woman suffer the way she did. Not if I had the power to stop it. He looked at her directly, and Elena saw pain in those gray eyes that probably very few people had ever been allowed to see. I have the power to stop Marcus from ever hurting you again. The question is whether you'll let me use it. Elena sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her mind spinning. Everything about this situation was insane. She was standing in the kitchen of a crime boss, discussing the destruction of her ex-boyfriend's life like it was a normal Tuesday morning conversation. She should say no, should walk away and figure out some other solution. But what other solution was there? A restraining order that Marcus would ignore, hoping that his fear of Dominic would last forever? Moving away and starting over, always wondering if he'd track her down. If you do this, she said quietly, what do you want in return? Dominic frowned. What do you mean? I mean, men like you don't do favors without expecting something back. So what is it? Money? Because I don't have any. Something else? For a moment, Dominic looked almost offended. Then his expression softened into something that might have been understanding. The only thing I want, he said, settling into the chair across from her, is for you to be safe. That's it. Elena searched his face for any sign of deception, but all she saw was sincerity. It terrified her how much she wanted to believe him. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Do what you have to do, but I don't want to know the details. Dominic nodded. It'll be taken care of by the end of the week. In the meantime, you should stay here. I can't stay here for a week. I have work, responsibilities. Vincent can drive you anywhere you need to go. You'll have protection until this is finished. Elena wanted to argue, but the relief flooding through her was too strong. For the first time in months, she could imagine a future where she wasn't afraid. Where she could walk to her car without looking over her shoulder, could go out to dinner without worrying about who might be waiting in the parking lot. Thank you, she said, and meant it more than she'd ever meant anything in her life. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Vincent drove Elena to work each morning and picked her up each evening. She spent her days immersed in research and her evenings in Dominic's penthouse, sharing meals and conversation that surprised her with its normalcy. She learned that he read voraciously, that his bookshelves held everything from classic literature to modern philosophy. He asked intelligent questions about her work and seemed genuinely fascinated by her research into how fairy tales had evolved across different cultures. In return, she learned pieces of his story, how he'd taken over his father's legitimate businesses when he was barely 25, how he'd expanded them into an empire that employed thousands of people. He didn't talk much about the other side of his life, the side that had made Marcus run in terror, but Elena was beginning to understand that Dominic Torino was far more complex than the newspapers made him out to be. You're staring, he said one evening as they sat on his couch, Elena curled up with a book while he worked on his laptop. Sorry, Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. I was just thinking. About? About how different you are than I expected. Dominic closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. Different how? I don't know. More human, I guess. Elena immediately regretted the words. That came out wrong. I just meant, I know what you meant. Dominic's smile was rueful. People see the name and the reputation, and they expect a monster. Are you? The question slipped out before Elena could stop it. A monster, I mean. Dominic was quiet for a long time, his gray eyes focused on something she couldn't see. I've done things that would probably horrify you, he said finally. I've made choices that other people would call monstrous. But everything I've done has been to protect the people I care about. Is that how you justify it? I don't justify it. I accept it. He looked at her directly. This is who I am, Elena. The man who saved you in that alley is the same man who has blood on his hands. I won't pretend otherwise. Elena should have been frightened by his honesty. Instead, she found herself respecting him for it. Marcus had lied constantly, had made her question her own memory and sanity. There was something refreshing about Dominic's brutal honesty, even when the truth was dark. Does it ever bother you? she asked. The things you've had to do? Every day. The admission was so quiet she almost missed it. But losing sleep over past decisions doesn't change them. All I can do is try to make sure the choices I make going forward are the right ones. Before Elena could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. I need to take this. It's about Marcus. Elena's stomach clenched as she watched him walk to his office. She tried to focus on her book, but the words blurred together. Whatever Dominic had set in motion was apparently coming to its conclusion. He returned 20 minutes later, his expression grim. It's done, he said simply. What happened? Marcus Williams was arrested this afternoon on charges of embezzlement and fraud. The FBI found evidence of systematic theft from his clients going back 3 years. He's looking at 25 to life. Elena set down her book with shaking hands. 25 to life? Dominic, that's what he deserves. Dominic's voice was hard. The man who put bruises on your body, who made you afraid to go home at night, he deserves everything that's coming to him. Elena knew he was right, but the finality of it still shook her. Marcus's life, as he knew it, was over. His career, his reputation, his freedom, all gone. What happens now? She asked. Now you go home and live your life without fear. The words should have filled her with relief, but instead Elena felt something that might have been panic. Going home meant leaving here, leaving Dominic. Over the past week she'd grown accustomed to his presence, to the safety she felt within these walls. More than that, she'd grown accustomed to him, to their morning conversations over coffee, to the way he listened when she talked about her work, to the way he made her feel like she was worth protecting. Right, she said, forcing a smile. Back to normal life. Vincent can pack up your things tomorrow morning. And Elena? Dominic's expression softened. If you ever need anything at all, you call me. Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She excused herself and went to the guest room, closing the door behind her and leaning against it. She should be celebrating. Marcus was gone, she was safe, and she could go back to the life she'd been building for herself. So why did she feel like crying? The next morning, Elena packed her few belongings with mechanical precision. The clothes she'd borrowed from Dominic's sister were cleaned and hanging back in the closet. It was like she'd never been there at all. Ready? Vincent asked when she emerged with her small bag. Almost. Elena looked around the penthouse one more time, memorizing the view from the windows, the warmth of the space that had been her sanctuary. Is Dominic here? He had an early meeting. He asked me to give you this. Vincent handed her a small envelope with her name, written in strong, masculine handwriting. Elena's heart raced as she opened it. Elena, thank you for trusting me to handle this situation. You are stronger than you know, and you deserve a life full of happiness and free from fear. If you ever need anything, my number is on the back of this note. Take care of yourself. Dominic. It was polite, distant, and absolutely final. Elena folded the note and slipped it into her purse, following Vincent to the elevator with a heart that felt like it was breaking. Her apartment felt like a museum of her old life. Everything was exactly as she'd left. But Elena herself had changed. She moved through the familiar spaces like a stranger, unable to settle into the routines that had once brought her comfort. The first few days were the hardest. She kept expecting Marcus to show up, kept looking over her shoulder despite knowing he was locked away in a federal holding facility. But gradually the fear began to fade, replaced by something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom. She threw herself into her work with renewed passion, staying late at the library to pursue research projects she'd abandoned when Marcus demanded more of her attention. She had dinner with Sarah, went to a movie by herself, bought groceries without carefully calculating whether Marcus would approve of her choices. She was living the life she'd dreamed of during those dark months with Marcus. So why did she feel so empty? The answer came to her 2 weeks later as she sat in her favorite coffee shop, reading a novel she'd been wanting to get to for months. A news report on the television caught her attention. something about a charity foundation that had just donated $2 million to domestic violence shelters throughout the city. The foundation was called the Isabella Torino Foundation, named after Dominic's mother. Elena stared at the screen, her heart racing. The reporter mentioned that this was the foundation's largest single donation, that it would fund counseling services and safe housing for hundreds of women trying to escape abusive relationships. She was on her feet and out the door before she fully realized what she was doing. The Torino Industries building was downtown, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that dominated the skyline. Elena had never felt smaller than she did walking into that marble lobby in her simple dress and cardigan, asking the receptionist if she could see Dominic Torino. "Do you have an appointment?" the perfectly polished woman asked. "No, but could you tell him Elena Morrison is here?" The receptionist made a phone call, her expression shifting from polite dismissal to surprise. "Mr. Torino will see you now. Top floor, suite 4000. The elevator ride seemed to take forever. Elena's palms were sweating, and she had no idea what she was going to say when she saw him. She just knew she had to see him, had to tell him. What, exactly? The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area that was all understated elegance and quiet power. A woman who looked like she could run a small country with one hand tied behind her back greeted Elena with a warm smile. "Ms. Morrison, Mr. Torino is waiting for you in his office." Elena followed her down a hallway lined with original artwork, her heart beating so fast she was sure everyone could hear it. The woman knocked on a door at the end of the hall and gestured for Elena to enter. Dominic was standing behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, but he looked up when she entered. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the expanse of his office. He looked good, better than good. The charcoal gray suit he was wearing was perfectly tailored, and his dark hair was styled in a way that made Elena want to run her fingers through it. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, never taking his eyes off Elena. He hung up and came around the desk. "Are you all right? Did something happen?" "No, nothing happened. I just—" Elena twisted her hands together, suddenly feeling foolish. "I saw the news about the foundation, the donation to the shelters." Dominic's expression was carefully neutral. "What about it?" "You named it after your mother." "Yes." "The woman who died because no one would help her." "Elena, if you have a point, the point is that you're not a monster." The words tumbled out of her in a rush. "You've spent your entire adult life making sure other women don't suffer the way she did. You saved me. You're funding shelters. You're using your power to protect people who can't protect themselves." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. "You came all the way downtown to tell me I'm not a monster?" "I came downtown to tell you that I miss you." Elena's cheeks burned, but she forced herself to continue. "These past 2 weeks have been everything I thought I wanted. I'm safe, I'm free, I can live my life however I choose. But I've been miserable, and I couldn't figure out why until I saw that news report. Elena, I know this is crazy. I know you probably have women throwing themselves at you constantly, and I'm just the librarian you helped out of a bad situation. But these past 2 weeks, all I could think about was our conversations. The way you made me feel safe. The way you actually listened when I talked about books and research and all the things Marcus said were boring." Elena took a shaky breath. "I think I'm falling in love with you, and I needed you to know that before I lost my nerve completely." The silence that followed was deafening. Dominic stared at her, his expression unreadable, and Elena felt her heart sink into her stomach. She'd made a terrible mistake. Of course he didn't feel the same way. He was Dominic Torino, powerful, wealthy, sophisticated. She was nobody special. "I should go," she said, backing toward the door. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come. I'll just—" "Elena." Her name stopped her in her tracks. "Come here." She hesitated, but the gentle command in his voice drew her back across the room. He was standing very still, watching her approach with those storm-gray eyes that had haunted her dreams for 2 weeks. "Do you have any idea," he said quietly when she was close enough to touch, "how hard it was to let you go?" Elena's breath caught. "What?" "I told myself I was doing the right thing, that you needed time to heal, to figure out who you were without someone controlling your life. The last thing you needed was another man making decisions for you. Dominic reached out and touched her cheek with fingers that trembled slightly. But every morning I woke up hoping Vincent would call and say you needed something, anything, just so I'd have an excuse to see you again. Really? Really? His thumb traced along her cheekbone, and Elena felt like she might melt. I've been in love with you since that first night, when you fell asleep in my guest room trusting me to keep you safe, but I didn't think I had the right to tell you that. Why not? Because you deserve better than a man with blood on his hands. You deserve someone clean, someone good. I deserve someone who makes me feel cherished and protected and understood, Elena interrupted, stepping closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I deserve someone who sees my work as important, who doesn't try to make me smaller to make himself feel bigger. I deserve someone who would move heaven and earth to keep me safe. She reached up and placed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart racing under her touch. I deserve you, Dominic. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, you think you deserve me too. Dominic's answer was to cup her face in both hands and kiss her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. Elena melted into him, her arms sliding around his neck as months of loneliness and fear dissolved into something bright and warm and perfect. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said simply. I love your brilliant mind and your generous heart and the way you see good in a man like me. I love that you're brave enough to build a new life and strong enough to walk into my office and tell me exactly how you feel. I love you too, Elena whispered. All of you. The man who saved me, the man who protects people who can't protect themselves, the man who reads philosophy and asks about my research and makes me feel like I'm worth something. You're worth everything, Dominic said fiercely. Everything. Do you understand me? Elena's answer was to kiss him again, pouring all of her love and gratitude and hope for the future into the contact. She'd walked into that alley 2 weeks ago, broken and afraid. She was walking out of this office whole and loved and ready to face whatever came next. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of the mirror in Dominic's bedroom, their bedroom now, adjusting the necklace he'd given her for her birthday. It was a simple chain with a small charm shaped like an open book, and she'd cried when he'd presented it to her because it was so perfectly her. Almost ready? Dominic appeared behind her in the mirror, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. They were attending a charity gala for the Isabella Torino Foundation, and Elena was both nervous and excited to appear publicly as his girlfriend for the first time. Almost? Elena leaned back against his chest, savoring the solid warmth of him. Are you sure about this? Once we walk into that ballroom together, everyone's going to know about us. Good, Dominic said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. I want everyone to know that you're mine, and I'm yours. I want the whole world to see how lucky I am. Elena turned in his arms, reaching up to straighten his bow tie. I'm the lucky one. We're both lucky, Dominic corrected, catching her hands and bringing them to his lips. We found each other when we needed each other most. Elena thought about that night in the alley, about Marcus's hands on her, and the fear that had consumed her for so long. It felt like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to someone else. The woman who had cowered against that brick wall barely resembled the woman standing here now, confident, loved, and unafraid. Ready to go show Chicago society what a real power couple looks like? She asked with a grin. Dominic's answering smile was brilliant. With you on my arm, I'm ready for anything. As they walked out into the night together, Elena felt a deep sense of rightness settle over her. This was her life now, full of love and laughter, and a man who would move mountains to make her smile. She'd survived the darkness and found her way to the light, and she was never letting go.